Oakland, California. 1967. The air in the gymnasium carries the smell of sweat and iron. Heavy bags hang from chains. Barbells rest on concrete. The walls hold photographs of men who built their bodies into monuments. This is a temple to strength, a place where size matters, where weight on the bar defines respect, where bigger always meant better. In the corner, a man sits on a bench press. 330 pounds of muscle, arms thick as tree trunks, chest broad enough to cast a shadow. His name doesn't matter now. What matters is what he represented. Raw power, unchallenged dominance, the belief that mass conquers all. He had spent 15 years building this body. Every rep, every set, every meal calculated to add another pound, another inch. He could bench press 450 pounds, deadlift 600. His handshake could crush bone. And in this world of iron and concrete, he was a god. Then someone told him about Bruce Lee, a small man, 135 pounds, teaching something called martial arts in a studio across town, making claims that seemed absurd. That speed could defeat strength. That technique could overcome size. That a man half the weight could dominate a man twice his mass. The iron pumper laughed. Not from cruelty, from disbelief. He had seen small men before. Quick men, skilled men. And he had watched them crumble when real strength entered the equation. Physics didn't lie. Force equals mass times acceleration. He had the mass. Whatever acceleration this Bruce Lee possessed couldn't possibly compensate. But the stories kept coming. A punch that could send a man flying from 1 inch away. Strikes faster than the eye could follow. Movements that defied the body's supposed limitations. And each story felt like an insult to everything the iron pumper had built his life around. So he went to see for himself. The studio was small. Wooden floor. Mirrors on one wall. Nothing like the cathedral of iron he trained in. No machines. No weights. No evidence of serious training. Just empty space and a few students moving through forms that looked more like dancing than fighting. Bruce Lee stood in the center, barefoot, wearing simple black pants and a white shirt. He looked even smaller in person. Compact, lean, no massive shoulders, no bulging arms. Nothing that suggested he could challenge a man of real size. The iron pumper introduced himself. Polite at first, respectful. He explained his background, his training, his belief system. He didn't come to mock. He came to understand, to see if the legend matched reality. Bruce listened, calm, present. His eyes tracked every movement, every gesture, every shift in weight. He wasn't measuring the man's words. He was measuring the man. When the iron pumper finished speaking, Bruce asked a simple question. Why are you here? The iron pumper answered honestly. To test the claim. To see if size really doesn't matter. To know if everything I've built has meaning. Bruce nodded slowly. Then he made an offer. Not a challenge. An invitation. Let me show you something. One technique. One demonstration. If it works, you'll understand. If it doesn't, you'll have your answer. The iron pumper agreed. He didn't feel threatened. This man was half his size. Even if the technique was real, even if Bruce landed a clean strike, what damage could 135 pounds possibly inflict on 330? Bruce asked him to stand naturally. No defensive posture. No anticipation. Just stand. The iron pumper complied. Relaxed. Confident. Curious. Bruce stepped closer. Within arm's reach. He raised one hand. Palm open. Fingers loose. He placed it against the iron pumper's chest. Not a push. Just contact. Light pressure. Then he asked one more question. Ready? The iron pumper smiled. Ready. What happened next lasted less than 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds changed everything the iron pumper believed about strength. Bruce's hand moved. Not a push. Not a shove. An explosion. His entire body unified into a single point of force. Legs. Hips. Torso. Shoulder. Arm, hand. Everything channeled through that palm pressed against the iron pumper's sternum. 1 inch of movement. 1 instant of perfect mechanical efficiency. The iron pumper left the ground. Not stumbling. Flying. His body lifted off the floor and traveled backward through the air. 6 feet. 7 feet. 8 feet. Until his back hit the wall. Not his feet. His back. Because he was still airborne when the wall stopped him. He slid down to the floor. Sitting. Stunned. Not injured. Not hurt. But fundamentally disrupted. His equilibrium shattered. His understanding of physics questioned. He sat there trying to process what his body had just experienced. 330 pounds. Built through years of disciplined training. Lifted and thrown like a child's toy. By a man nearly half his size. Using one hand. Moving 1 inch. The other students had stopped training. The room was silent. But Bruce didn't gloat. Didn't celebrate. He simply extended his hand to help the iron pumper stand. An offer. Not a declaration of victory. The iron pumper took the hand. Rose slowly. His legs were steady. His body was fine. But something inside him had been permanently rearranged. Bruce spoke quietly. Your strength is real. Your training is real. Your dedication is admirable. But strength without understanding is incomplete. You've built a fortress. I've learned to move through walls. The iron pumper understood immediately. This wasn't about strength versus weakness. This was about knowledge. Bruce hadn't overpowered him. Bruce had understood something about force and structure and timing that 15 years in the gym had never taught. He asked the question that had been forming since his back hit the wall. How? Bruce gestured to his own body. This weighs 135. When I pushed you, it weighed much more. Because I wasn't pushing with my arm. I was pushing with the ground. Through my legs. Through my structure. My hand was just the point of contact. The earth moved you. I just showed it where to go. The iron pumper absorbed this. Then asked another question. Can this be learned? Bruce's expression shifted. Something gentler. More open. Everything can be learned. But first you have to unlearn the belief that size is the answer. Size is a tool. One tool among many. You've mastered that tool. Now you have to learn the others. They talk for an hour. Not master to student. Not victor to defeated. Two people exploring different paths to the same destination. The iron pumper asked about training methods. Bruce explained concepts. Economy of motion. Centerline theory. The kinetic chain. How the body becomes a unified weapon when every part moves in harmony. At one point the iron pumper asked if Bruce had always been this way. Small but devastating. Bruce smiled and said no. When I was younger, I thought I needed to be bigger. Stronger. I tried to build muscle like you have. But my body wouldn't cooperate. So I had to find another path. I had to accept what I am and maximize it completely. This confession meant more than the demonstration, because it revealed something the iron pumper hadn't considered. Bruce Lee wasn't born knowing these things. He had struggled, doubted, questioned his own physical limitations, and then he had transcended them through understanding rather than force. Before the iron pumper left, he asked one final question. If we fought, really fought, what would happen? Bruce was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that the iron pumper would remember for the rest of his life. If we fought, I would try not to hurt you. Because your strength deserves respect. But I would win. Not because I'm better than you. Because I've spent more time learning how to move through resistance. You push through obstacles. I flow around them. Both approaches work. Mine just works faster. There was no arrogance in this statement. No pride. Just observation. The kind of calm certainty that comes from testing something 1,000 times and finding the same result. The iron pumper bowed. An instinctive gesture. Something his body did before his mind decided. Then he walked out of the studio into the Oakland afternoon. The sun was the same. The streets were the same. But he had been fundamentally altered. He returned to his gym that evening. Looked at the weights with different eyes. They were still tools. Still valuable. But they weren't complete. He had built a fortress. Bruce Lee had shown him that fortresses have doors. Over the following months, he began training differently. Still lifting. Still building strength. But now adding movement. Flexibility. Speed. Timing. He sought out martial artists. Not to prove them wrong. To learn what they knew that he didn't. And he never forgot the lesson of that afternoon. That 3 seconds when his absolute certainty met absolute reality. When 330 pounds learned that mass without understanding is just weight waiting to be moved by someone who knows how. Bruce Lee never spoke about this encounter publicly. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a real demonstration. Just a moment between two people. One showing. One learning. No cameras. No audience. No legend required. But the iron pumper told people. Not as a confession of defeat. As a revelation. He would describe that moment with wonder in his voice. The way a man describes seeing something impossible become real. And he always ended the story the same way. I thought I knew what strength was. Then I met someone who showed me strength is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. And the puzzle isn't about defeating people. It's about understanding yourself completely enough that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Years later, after Bruce Lee's death, The iron pumper was asked if he ever regretted that encounter, if having his worldview shattered in 3 seconds had damaged him somehow. He laughed, a genuine sound, full of warmth. Regret? That day saved me from a lifetime of thinking I'd reached the peak. Bruce showed me there was no peak, just endless learning. He didn't defeat me. He freed me. This is the truth of that afternoon in Oakland. Not a fight, not a humiliation. A teacher and a student meeting at the exact moment both were ready. One ready to demonstrate, one ready to receive. The iron pumper still trained until his body could no longer lift the weights. But his approach had changed. He moved between exercises with fluidity. He studied angles. He learned how joints and leverage and timing could multiply force. He became something he never thought possible, strong and wise. Because on one afternoon in 1967, a man who believed in size met a man who believed in understanding. And understanding won in 3 seconds. Not through destruction, through demonstration.